Hello friends, how are you? My name is Ari Ferger and today I'm going to talk about Icelandic runestaves. This is the second part of this series and I'll share with you other 13 runestaves. On the previous video I haven't mentioned this, but I think it's important to underline this aspect. Icelandic talismans are numerous and make up over a third of the magical operations encountered in magical and spell work throughout Scandinavian history of witchcraft. Talismans and amulets are types of magical spells that are designed to be worn or carried by a person for a certain amount of time in order to achieve their effect. The creation of a talisman involved a variety of aspects, from the selection of the tool to create it, the material for scribing on, to the part of the body where the talisman is to be worn or carried. Quite often a prayer was to be said aloud and then carried as a talisman, to imbue it with power or to awaken that power or the effect. Incantations were very important in the creation of talismans. Many of the magical operations are accompanied by the speaking of certain words, and in some cases an incantation or a prayer is the only means by which the aim of the talisman is accomplished. I've given a few examples on the previous video. Incantations are the very essence of Nordic magic. The very word for magic in Icelandic is galdur. It is derived from galla, to chant. And in the previous video we have already seen that most incantations are a mixture between the pagan and the Christian. We always have in mind that the Catholic Church was the great religious and military booster in the fight against the old ways, trying to wipe out, root and stem the very spirit of pre-Christian beliefs. But in Iceland things were a bit different, and it seems that witchcraft and sorcery do not appear to have been persecuted with any great vigor in the Catholic period, and this is why different religious beliefs were syncretized. There are hardly any indications that the Catholic Church actively tried to wipe out the belief in the occult, in the Icelandic case of course. However, things changed rapidly after the conversion to Lutheranism and a new intolerance took hold. When you think someone can't be as awful as the Christians were to the pagans, well, someone comes up with a new idea not only to delight themselves in tormenting pagans, but also in tormenting Catholics. With this being said, let's move on to the Icelandic runestaves. Vigvisir, signpost. I want to begin this video the same way as the previous one, starting with one of the most famous Icelandic runestaves, and just like Algishjálmur, in the future I shall make a video only about this runestave. Anyway, the Vigvisir was carried so a person would never lose his way in storms and bad weather, even if the way was not known. Many people nowadays use this symbol as a sort of compass to not lose their way in the great path of life, so it gained a whole new meaning in our modern age. However, it is possible that its true purpose was only to guide people to safety during long voyages, especially into unknown places. We know that Scandinavians during medieval times were great explorers and became experts in seafaring, and obviously there was the need to have some special spiritual assurance that people would reach the end of the journey safe and sound. However, this symbol is only found in modern Icelandic collections of spells. There are no evidences that this symbol was known or used during the Viking Age or earlier. It's possible that it was known during these historical times, but it's also possible that it was imported or invented after such historical periods. It might even have a great Christian influence. So stating that the Vigvisir is exclusively a Viking symbol is a common mistake. So any information about this symbol that goes beyond what I've just explained, you can be certain people are just making stuff up. However, there's a lot to tell about this symbol if we focus on its meaning in our modern perspectives. You will find throughout the internet many variations of this symbol, such as these examples. The one I could find closer to the one we see recorded in the collection of spells is this one. Even so, I've made a few alterations, see if you can spot them. Not much difference, cutting here and there. However, on the internet everyone seems to forget this little dot here. I had to place it. It might seem of no importance, but on the other hand it might make all the difference. The sigil of King Solomon, son of David. Now I must say there is a problem with this one. You will find two sigils with the exact same symbols and with the exact same inscriptions, but one without the circles and the other, as you can see in here. The one without the circle seems to be an older version, and this is what it was used for: against the hate and poison of adversaries and enemies. The person who carries this sigil will never be harmed by the temptations of the fiend, which means the devil, and no enemy of the person will come forth against that person in any way. The person will also never be betrayed in either food or drink, which means that the wearer of this sigil will be safe from poison in either food or drink. Nor will the person be betrayed by any false things, which means that the person is protected against magic in general. And as you can see in here, and I don't think there is the need to point this out because it's quite obvious, but well, this sigil is greatly influenced by Christianity. I suspect that it is a whole new symbol for an already existing one, but turned to the Christian faith. And if this sigil had any incantations at all, they probably were also very Christian, added to a few pagan elements. Now this one with the circles in it means a whole different thing. It's to count out playing cards which are lying face down. It appears that along with this symbol there was a mode of card counting in order to win a game of cards, involving a very complex mathematical method. Card playing was an activity introduced into Iceland in the 16th century and was roundly condemned by the Protestant church authorities. So probably people wanted to have fun and wanted to make sure no harm would come to them or have any problems with the religious law, and also that no one would cheat with magic. It's the only explanation I can find for now that links a protective sign against harm and magic in general to a game of cards. It's a symbol to virtually protect against anything, so I suspect this symbol was used for other purposes, probably an amulet even, against harm and evil in general. Brunnslustarfir. Wet signs. This one simply states, carve the upper sign on your whetstone, the other one below. It isn't clear if you should carve the upper sign on one side of the whetstone and the other sign on the other side of the whetstone, but maybe that doesn't make much sense, and what it simply means is that you should carve both signs together, but you should start first by carving the upper sign and then the other one. Then, after the carving of the staves, lay a bit of grass over it and then wet it or use it under the sun and don't look at the edge. Well, as you know, a whetstone is a sharpening stone and are used to sharpen the edges of steel tools and implements through grinding and honing. And it was obviously an important object to have, not just for warriors to sharpen their weapons, but also for craftsmen to sharpen their tools. I have one such object in my house. It belonged to my great-grandfather. He was a craftsman and he always carried his whetstone with him. It's not just any stone, it's a proper stone only suitable to sharpen steel. People wouldn't just grab any stone they would find and work with it. It will take time and knowledge to find a proper stone for this job. One stone that would endure but at the same time sharpen tools and weapons without damaging them. Just like my great-grandfather, I'm sure people would carry these sharpening stones with them all the time. It would be something very personal, which would gain a certain amount of importance, so it's only natural that people would give these stones a certain spiritual connection, because without them, warriors couldn't fight, nor craftsmen could make their creations. Against all kinds of suffering and danger. Any person, and it's quite specific that can be both genders, carries these staves and no pain may harm the person. And no sword, nor any of the person's enemies, and no worm in drink or food will harm the person. It's quite interesting to notice this aspect that no worm will harm the person. Ancient Germanic peoples believed that diseases were sometimes caused by tiny, invisible worms, more akin to serpents actually, that would be in the food and drink. Here it is implied that such rune staves prevented these invisible snakes to enter the person's body. These staves are 16 in number, plus at the end a solar cross to seal the deal. In here we have an expression of the continuing potency of the number system of the younger Futhark. To cause fear, have the following staves on your person and your enemies will be frightened of you. These 11 staves also contain several runic forms found in the next spell that I'm about to show you. For protection against all kinds of evil. If one wishes to avoid anything bad, have these staves on your person, then no one may harm you, not a sword, no torment, no worm, nor poison either in your food or drink. This row of 24 staves contains many recognizable rune staves. Here we have the number of the Elder Futhark, and also a mixture between Norse runes, stylized runes, and Anglo-Saxon runes. Locustafir, luck staves. Whoever carries these signs with him will meet with no bad luck, neither on sea nor land. Luck to our Scandinavian ancestors wasn't the same thing as it is for us. The Emingia, which is happiness, good fortune, and luck. This Emingia, or luck, was a sort of force that could be pulled to ourselves and help us in life, a force people could influence coming their way and into their lives by a variety of actions and choices that led the Emingia to choose a person. It's a sort of personal entity, part of the self, but can be worked in certain circumstances. When a person dies, for instance, the person's Emingia is often reincarnated in one of his or her descendants, particularly if the child is given the name of the original owner of the Emingia. The Emingia can also be lent to others during life to assist them in particularly troublesome times when luck is needed. Speaking of luck, getting lucky was also a major concern to our Scandinavian ancestors. Alright, that was a poor joke, but let's take a look at this rune stave. Quite tricky, so pay attention. Its purpose is to bewitch a woman and win her love. If you want to bewilder a woman so that she finds her way to no one except you, make a hole in the floor where she goes over it and put 18 spear blood, Jotungerablod, and carve a ring on the outside of it and her name and these staves. Molturs, Mother, inverted threefold, Blood, Nod, Homla, and Gappaldur, and read this conjuration. I look at you and you feel love and affection for me with all your heart. You can't sit anywhere nor stand to be anywhere unless you love me. This I ask of Odin and of all those who know how to read women runes. That you can neither endure nor thrive unless you love me with all your heart. Thus it will be like you are burning in your bones, and even worse in your fleshly parts. It will be allotted to you to be unmarried unless you love me. You shall freeze in your feet and never get honor or happiness. You'll sit as if burning, your hair falling out. May your clothes be ripped up unless you want to have me, you easy woman. Alright, this sickening obsession sounds much more like a curse rather than a love spell, but let's take a close look to all of this. Okay, putting 18 spear blood, Jotungerablod, literally the blood of 18 spears. Jotungeir, 18 gar, is a kinning for worm and or serpent. This forms a magical link with chthonic powers, or the infernal powers, powers of the underworld, and it's also possible that this whole thing needs snake's blood to work. After this, there are a series of staves to be carved. First, Molturs, the Thurisas rune. The word Molturs clearly means Earth Thurs, Earth Giant, which perhaps indicates a reverse Thurs rune, which is a powerful cursing sign. The Mold could also refer to both the Thurisas rune and Manas rune, and reinforce the image of the staves connected to the ground. After this, Maldur, inverted threefold, the rune we also know as Halgis, inverted 3 times. Then comes Blood, which means leaf, including a leaf of parchment or paper, as well as the blade of a knife. Blood might be an alternate name for the B rune, Berkanan, but I'm also guessing that blood is one of the runestaves we see in this set of runestaves, because after that comes Naud, which is the rune we know as Nautis, and finally Homla, which might be the same case as with blood, but the meaning is quite obscure, and then Galpaldur, which is the runestave right there. Galpaldur could mean the age or eternity of space, meaning void. The name Galpaldur is also found in the spell for success in wrestling, another runestave completely different as you can see in here, but in this case combined with the other runestaves it turns into a runestave for success in the whole affair. In the conjuration it mentions the women runes or Kvenrunir or Kvennarunar, which were originally formulas used to win the love of women, and the rest of the conjuration to me seems more like a horrible curse and not a love spell at all, but a deep obsessive psychopathic lust. The previous runestaves were a bit creepy and with a heavy atmosphere in the incantation, and also with a certain complexity, so let's soften the subject a little bit by presenting you the fart runes. Yes, you heard it, fart runes, as in flatulence. Write these staves on white calfskin with your blood. Rouse your blood from your thigh and say this incantation. I carve you 8 house, 9 naud, 13 thurs, which are to afflict your belly with great shitting and shooting pains, and all these may afflict your belly with great farting. May your posts split asunder, may your guts burst, may your farting never stop, neither day nor night. May you become weak as the fiend Loki, who was snared by all the gods. In your mightiest name, Lord God, Spirit, Creator, Hudan, Thor, Savior, Freyra, Froya, Oper, Satan, Beelzebub, Helper, Mighty God, protect with your followers, Huthios, Mors, Nocte, Vitalis. No, this is not a joke, this is a real incantation. It's interesting to see that the incantation mentions a number of old Germanic gods, such as Hudan, Thor, Freyr and Froya, as well as 2 Hebraic sort of demons, Satan and Beelzebub. We have also the Helper. It's a translation from a technical term, medialvari, a parish clerk. There is also Oper, which probably stands for opera, meaning work. The other terms, Huthios, Mors, Nocte and Vitalis, have a more obscure meaning. Huthios might be from the Greek, which might mean the god. Mors may indicate the Latin word mors, death. Nocte remains obscure, but it sounds a lot like night, while Vitalis may stand for the Latin phrase vitalex, life law. There is a clear connection to the word life, but in my opinion there is also a great similarity with the Latin word vialis. The viales belong to the Etruscan deities without any physical representation, spirits, the lares, and among these lares there were the viales, the spirits of the roads. These spirits played an important role in the Roman religion, especially during the Republic. We know that for both the Greeks and the Romans, places where roads met, crossroads, were places of great religious activity for ceremonies and rituals, so vitales might be referring to the viales, the spirits and forces of roads, of the paths. To cause fear in your enemies. If you want your enemies to fear you, always have this stave under your left arm. Yes, we have seen it before, rune staves to cause fear in one's enemies, but I've picked this one because it's cute and it looks like a crab, but also we have it again, the number 8 staves radiating from the ring, and it seems the number 8 was the key number for a lot of incantations and magical work. The shape of these staves here could be intended as Thurs runes, or the set could be a runic code, 3 in one side and 5 in the other, 3 might indicate the third heath. As you know, the runic alphabet is divided into groups of Heithir, and the third is referred to as Tyr's heath, the set of Tyr, the god of war, but was once a god linked to creation and the sun. And the number 5 in here could refer to the 5th rune, which can be Raido, in the specific cryptic reordering. This only to tell you that most rune staves also include specific numbers and mathematical sets, some more complex than others, which might be codes. The rune staves are complex magical symbols which not only involve incantations and the power of speech, carving and or drawing, but also numerology and mathematics to construct magical codes. Rhodocros, crucifix, the insignia of Saint Olafur, which one carries for protection. Olaf II, a king of Norway during the first half of the 11th century. Olafr Öralsson. Icelanders wrote extensively about Olaf, and there are several Icelandic sagas about him. Olaf not only unified Norway, but also fulfilled the conversion of the nation to Christianity. Herslustafir, strengthening staves. Wear this on your left breast to strengthen your courage. It is as simple as that. And finally, just the same way the previous video came to an end, I present to you Svedentorn, Sleeptorn. This sign would be carved on oak and laid under the head of the one who is supposed to sleep so that the person cannot awake until it is taken away. I've already spoken about this in the previous video, the importance of wood of certain trees and the magical properties. So without going any further, you probably feel quite tired by now if you have reached this far in this video. Congratulations and go rest a while. Too much information in one day calls for rest, so one can settle all the information and absorb it. Alright friends, thank you so much for your time and for being in here for another lesson. Check out the previous video and see you on the next one. Tack för idag!